Are we good?
Yes.
All right. So we'll start at 8:04. We have a quorum here. We need to do a roll call.
Yes, please.
Okay. Mark, comments?
Maria Joy, on here.
Robert Schutz. Robert here.
Walter Arias.
Marlene Meyer.
Rick Clyde with Castle Management.
All right. Let's begin. And so we just want to approve the minutes from the prior two meetings.
Yes, so yesterday I got a chance to resend you those minutes and do you guys have any questions, comments about what you guys read on?
No, other than, and I know we weren't going to have meetings for a long time, but I thought we were supposed to get them like a week after the previous meeting.
Yeah.
This was an emergency thing that we would have.
No,
So-
a week
No,
after
no,
the previous
I
meeting.
asked for them.
Not a week before the next one.
I did
That's
ask.
why he said we sent them. I did send them to you.
Yes, I read them
Before.
yesterday.
So
I love it, it was fine.
Oh,
I know.
Everything that was okay for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if I can just have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for August 14th and August 24th.
Yes.
Motion from Ann, second by
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. It was all good.
And all in favor? Okay. I'm nothing against? Somebody against? Okay, thank you guys. I'm gonna ask that because this meeting is gonna be very important that we skip the management report portion of it and we don't have management report yet ready for you guys.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do we need a vote for that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. And for new business, we have the ratification of the board to hire a firm on a contingency basis to assist with the Hurricane Irma insurance claim. This decision was made fast because of the severity of the damages that we encountered. And that's the reason why we're having this meeting also, so we can ratify the decision, let the community know what this agreement was about and what benefits it might bring to the community. We also have representatives from that firm here that will give us further explanation, and they will also provide us with some updates with regards to what's going to happen inside the units that were affected and timelines, etc. Okay. So without further ado, if you guys are okay with the agreement, I would like to get a motion to ratify this decision.
Now, there's nothing in here that says that if we don't meet the deductible, that we're still responsible for all of the professionals that were hired through you guys. We're still responsible to pay that. So let's say something comes in and we don't meet deductible. Higher than what we would have gotten ourselves, but it doesn't quite make the million. What happens?
Well, all of the emergency mitigation that you do is your responsibility. And that's the reason why hiring the attorney, in my opinion, was necessary, because you're already in for national water mitigation that was all over the building, for the repairs to the door sensor, to the wall that fell down, for the debris removal, for the the elevator issue that happened immediately after, and so on and so on. So none of that has to do with hiring an attorney. The attorney comes in, and our firm comes in to make sure that when all of these bills are coming in, that they are tabulated, quantified. But an insurance company isn't going to look for damage. And that's the other thing that's what we do, is that the insurance adjuster will come to your property and say, okay, tell us what you have. And no one, as board members, you might not have the particular expertise, the time, the desire to go look for damage. So there's damage there that you don't even know exists, damage that's going to creep up later on. So that's where we come in. All those bills that you've already incurred are going to be incurred by you hit to the unit owners, and you're gonna have all these expenses. Now, the only people I brought in was a consultant, a loss consultant.
Right.
And 24/7 was brought in by the loss consultant to help mitigate the recurring wetness that's happening and to get a handle on this and properly document it. So when we come in on a contingency, and we've spent dozens of hours all over this building and our office, we're documenting everything and looking for other damages. So we found significant mechanical damage, structural damage, window damage, and the windows are still wetting. And so we're categorizing all of these and then doing what is called a preliminary assessment of damage. So what has happened is, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, when we notified the insurance company of the claim and our representation. This is Lexington.
Come on, let him come up here.
That's fine, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So let me just stand here. So when we notified the insurance company of our representation, and we also notify them verbally when they assign an adjuster, we notified them of the severity of the claim, severity of the damages from what we saw. And that was within the first week of the storm. And immediately they then reassigned the claim to a large claims adjuster. Ultimately, the insurance company's desire is that you stay deductible. And their first words out of their mouth is, "Are you going to meet the deductible? We don't, this." And so, it's our job then to say, "No, this is a serious claim. It's going to exceed the deductible." They immediately assigned a large claims adjuster. That adjuster then contacted our firm. We were here on Saturday, still doing our assessment. He emailed and says, "I'm going to be in town on Saturday." That's not this Saturday, it's last Saturday. I want to take a walkthrough of the property. And Kevin Horvath of York, York is named in the windstorm policy as the claims firm. And they do this, Lexington does this with their policies, and that's typical. To name an outside adjusting firm to assist with assessment and the claim and having experts come. So we walked the property with Kevin Horvath of York, and showed him all the elements of damage. That was so key. That's why I said to you guys that you're ahead of the curve, because he had not yet gone to any other building. He saw this building at the time when it was still wet, there was still visible damage, things weren't drying out, and he said he thanked us because it makes his job easier. And then Howard Wolf of HW3 was here as well, and we went through item by item in this room and then walked it. Then he says, "Okay, I want to get experts out right away. And I want your loss assessment so we could set the reserves." And what we do, we know that the insurance carrier setting their reserves initially at a high point is critical in these cases. Because later on, if you don't show them all the damage, and then they have to increase the reserve, they got so many people asking why. And it looks like they didn't do their job. So we're helping him help us. So we did all of that. We walked the property. We sent him a loss assessment already this week. And that loss assessment outlines damages of this property at about $10 million based upon an estimate. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But it's so far above the deductible, they need to realize that these are all of the damages that we see. We have experts to back this up. So just as he said, thank you, we're going to be out next Thursday with our experts, and we're going to look at the different items of damages. Now, are they going to pay?
That's York's expert.
Yeah, York is going to be here 7:30 next Thursday, and he wants full access. So the York adjuster, Kevin, is going to come back. And he's not, and he's happy to do this. This is what he needs to do to set the reserve. So he advised Lexington, set the reserves, the damages that we looked for, found, assessed, categorized, and provided that assessment to him assist him in setting the reserves, notifying Lexington, hiring the right experts. We've already had these experts out on the property. The experts include a window specialist. And so the window specialist looks at the windows because you guys, not only is there water intrusion, but the mullions get sandblasted. And this type of storm, it's not just the water. It's not like then you guys have to live with a braided mullion from the sand or pitted glass or in leaky windows. So our job is to get an expert and to get you guys money to get that taken care of. And so our expert, with respect to the windows, has already assessed the windows. In fact, was the supplier of all the doors to all the units when he worked for the manufacturer, knows exactly about this building, knows the systems that were used, the different systems in the gym, the different systems. So we got the right guy. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, it sounds like you're about to wrap up, so.
Well, not really.
He's an attorney, he's never going to wrap up. He's used to being paid by the word.
I had a couple of questions. This is the first time I'm reading the agreement. So clearly it says it's on a contingency basis, and if there's no recovery, the client isn't indebted. And no recovery meaning you're not going to meet the deductible.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
If I don't get
that
any
was
money
what I
for
had.
you for the condo association over the deductible, then I don't get anything.
So
It's
then
my job
so
to
then-
beat the deductible.
So
It's
then
over the deductible.
Section A, it says it's settled before a lawsuit is filed, to answer 22.5% of any recovery
Right.
beyond the deductible.
Yes, absolutely. The deductible, it's only money, my recovery is recovery to the condo association beyond the deductible. And I explained that to the board, and that was a critical item that they wanted to make sure.
So
And that's
that's his
absolute, a
incentive.
recovery
Together.
is,
That's why
you know,
it's
that's the, I don't do my job, I don't get paid if I don't meet the deductible. And I don't do my job if I don't beat the deductible. And I want to beat the deductible in an intelligent manner with documentable evidence supporting the losses and the damages that this building suffered that you don't necessarily see. And somebody in one unit isn't going to feel the water intrusion or the re-wetting like this gentleman is having in the E unit, so there's different units suffering different damage. So what we've done, again, like with the windows, we think that the windows that are affected need to be pulled and reset. They may need to be replaced. We'll make that argument to the adjuster. But it's our job to get the funds that goes to the condo association to make that determination of who they hire, how it's done, with the balcony railings. Those railings were sandblasted and they're chipping and they look horrible. So now that situation, we have an expert. We have a coatings expert that I hired to come out and he analyzes the paint and he says whether or not there's a paint failure. And it doesn't matter if there was a pre-existing condition in that you guys were thinking of having new railings for aesthetic purposes. Wanting new railings and now needing new railings is a different thing. Now you need them. Some were damaged, the integrity of some have been affected, but the property value is down right away. If you look at this building the day before the storm and after the storm, your property value is down significantly because you got railings that are blasted. You have paint peeling from the ceiling to the balconies. You have hallways that are a mess. So all of this stuff gets quantified and assessed, and we've already done that, already have documented it, and still doing it.
Can I just ask a couple of quick questions? To date, how much has the expenditure been for the association in this remediation?
Well, for HW3 group, the council, that group, I don't know, I don't have that. That's the firm that I brought in to help with the assessment. But the expenditure, like for now, let's start with national.
Association expense or your expense?
No, it's an association expense. They've hired them, and I want them to give independent opinions because they're the experts in immediate remediation and mitigation.
so we
I'm a
don't-
lawyer to get the money.
So we don't know what their expense has been so far.
It's hourly for that.
Yes.
It's time and,
So you know
it's
what
time
it's,
and
the
travel.
max it could possibly be.
Okay.
We have
Time
to
and travel.
So that's that portion. What about the actual
We don't know.
work or extraction,
Yeah, this
water
is-
remediation,
Yeah.
any of the costs to the
Yeah.
association so far?
And I've been trying to get National, which is the company that was hired immediately to dry out the unit and take care of the common area hallways, to give me a bill. And what happened was, they still haven't given me a bill, or to give
But
you a
this
bill.
is my concern, and I'm certainly not an attorney, but my concern is that we don't know really if we're going to meet the deductible. We really don't know that, and we're trying to meet the deductible, so the association might be getting on the hook for increased expenses, when in fact, and they truly will be on the hook for that. And if they don't meet the deductible, then they're kind of, so
With
it's
the
almost a
damages,
conflict,
the
'cause you wanna
damages I
drive up,
see,
but you
I
wanna
have,
pay-
I mean, I have little doubt that you're going to beat the deductible. Everything that I've seen, all of that, it all goes in a single pot. The water remediation bill by National that we haven't, is probably gonna be $250 at least, maybe as much as $350. I don't know, but just based upon experience and what we've seen them do and how they bill, because they're, those companies can charge a lot, and justifiably so in emergency situations, because they have to get manpower here, they have all the equipment. So their bill alone is probably gonna be a third of the deductible.
So, do we have any written or documented assurances from the insurance company at this point that we will clearly meet the
No.
deductible?
Not yet. And there,
Any
this is,
indications
so
whatsoever?
that's why we're kind of fast track this, because I know there's an anxiety level in a condo association situation about that, as opposed to a single owner commercial property or apartment multi-housing. Because there's a lot of folks, you guys, that are gonna have to, that may be assessed in the interim until the insurance money is received. So it might be out of pocket, I don't know, you guys have done assessments before. So there's absolutely that deductible amount for these vendors that have provided services now and that still need to do so, are probably gonna be part of an assessment, or some type of, payment by the association in the interim. But that's something that you guys gotta talk about.
Let me comment on that quickly. Do you require an HO6 policy for unit owners?
No, we don't require it, but this is what the
But
new
if-
bylaws changes are coming
Okay,
into
right,
effect.
right.
That's
But
the
if
vote
you
coming
do
out.
have an HO6 policy, usually your policy covers loss assessment around $2,000. So if the association does assess to meet the deductible, your homeowner's policy will kick in, there's no deductible on it, and you can get $2,000 toward any assessment. It's usually included in your policy.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's our job again to look for the damages, quantify them, categorize them, get experts out to present them to the insurance company, and to make sure that everything's paid for, not just, if we weren't here, what would have be happening, you'd be getting, first of all, you have all this wet carpets, hallways, unit owners with re-wetting, and you have a bill from National, and drywall needs to be removed. And there would be kind of an assessment, contractors coming in, some you don't know, some you do know, it's a matter of verifying them and vetting them, and then time goes by, and people forgot about this part or that part, or it's not being assessed, and it gets kicked down the road. And then before you know it, no one's presented the railing claim or the paint failure claim on the building, and the insurance company is gonna say, hey, well, that was a pre-existing condition, we didn't mention, For example, it includes the paint failure on the entire building, because if some of it's peeled, then our argument is the whole building needs to be painted. This is a very nice condominium.
home for the building.
Yeah, it's bubbled, you have water pockets, we photographed all that. And we've had it tested and documented, even with the railings. Some of these railings were in poor condition, but they were relatively repainted. And so the railings need to be refinished, but that means they have to be brought down to the original and then properly painted. Now, when we showed that to the adjuster, he said, well, for safety reasons, I may just go ahead, I'm gonna look at the policy and replace them. You know what I mean? So these are the things that are being done.
And these are things that are really not costing the association money. It's not like you have crews out here or you're doing anything with the
No, these
paint
are
other
just
than
experts.
the consultant,
No,
the
yeah.
expert.
But
All right,
there's
you go.
one,
I have a question. So speaking of kicking things down the road, can't they take, like, painting the building and kick that down, get paid for it by the insurance company, and then defer that
Yes.
till later towards the deductible?
Yes, absolutely. So this is what happens. The insurance company is gonna look at the loss assessment. They're gonna then contest certain items, and then they're gonna want further documentation. And then after we provide that to them, or when in the next 30 days, they may release funds and determine that it's, like what you said, that it meets the deductible, we're gonna start releasing funds to pay for certain things. So they don't get really specific at first, but they are provided a assessment and a cash flow position that we presented to them about what the condominium is facing in expenditures as a result of this storm. So that's already been provided to them, and it's very significant. But like what you're saying is, if they're gonna say right now, okay, we're gonna pay for the balcony, this is X amount of dollars, that money is then in the condo's coffers, and it could be used to pay for the mitigation damages and expenses that you have now, so that later on.
Or it'd be deferred till later, so that would help them meet the deductible.
Right, yeah, you're deferring the work on the balconies, because you're using those funds to offset your immediate expenses that are bundled into this deductible.
So again, do we have any idea so far what the expenditure has been to the association? I mean, ballpark?
Well, the ballpark for national is gonna be 250 to 300,000.
Okay, so that's
That's-
300,000. Then we
right.
have the consultant add.
Even if you did 8 hours a day for 2 weeks,
Each day.
add, I don't know, it's between 250 and 400.
Now, the consultant is part of, under the policy, we have an obligation to provide them information in support of our claim. So
I
that's
guess-
our consultant.
What I'd like to get at is, at this point, is it maybe a good idea, or I would make the recommendation, that we stop all expenditures right now, just freeze everything right now until we have some sort of assurance from the insurance company next Thursday?
But they're still in the middle of it.
but there is.
Yeah.
Well, you mean like stop, first of all, the consulting services, like what we're doing to document and support the claims to get the big money
Right.
on this
That
case,
should be almost
you don't
done.
wanna stop that. And then, so what
Well,
you're,
that's
not a
resume, but
hard
that can
cost.
resume. That can resume once you get an assurance from the insurance company that, okay, guys, you're going to meet your $1.6 million. So move on. But until we have that assurance,
like, for example, if you would have said that 3 days ago, then we would never have given them the loss assessment, the cash flow, and then your net, and what our big picture of the damages, and then you would never ever meet the number. They want you to stop their the assessment, because therefore, we're not gonna be able to provide them the documentation to show that it's over the
no,
deductible.
you're not stopping it, I guess. Did you say they were coming on Thursday to give an answer?
No, they're coming on Thursday to walk through with our experts, to show all the areas of damage, and then their experts are gonna go, give a nod, or say, well, we wanna look at this. So it's a
They're not rushing
process.
for anything for us. They're not, as far as the insurance company's concerned. I mean, he's got them really in tow and doing what they're supposed to do, but they're not anxious to come on Thursday and give
And
us a
if
number.
they don't continue to do what they're doing and pile up the losses, when the insurance company comes next Thursday, is what I'm
And analyze the
understanding, and comes here
And
to,
assess
yeah,
what they cost.
comes here, we won't have that pile of losses to claim from them. So having them in the building behooves us.
Yeah, I thought
No,
you had that pile already.
No, we have the pile, but we need to continue to do what we're doing. And again, my work's on a contingency. I'm doing it to bang over the insurance company's head and make them realize with documented support and expert opinions that this is a loss well over the deductible. So you're still talking about that first 1 million. Let's say you're at a third for the water remediation that was done, but you have some emergency things that probably need to be done also right now. And you have wet drywall in units. The drywall is getting re-wet because the seals on the windows have been damaged. The whole building is shaken for 24 hours. And some of the people on the north side or the west side might not be experiencing it. But this gentleman here, with these rains the last few days, now his unit's getting wet every time it rains. So you have, and it's the obligation of the condo association to make sure that the envelope of the building is watertight. So they have and so the problem is if it doesn't get fixed and the drywall removed, then you get sick drywall, mold, you have a common area HVAC system. So you have some immediate things you need to decide to do. And that's going to go toward the deductible. Unfortunately, you can't kick the can down the road on that. You can do it with railings, you can do it with painting the building, but there's this emergency remediation and mitigation that needs to be done. And it's not just to beautify the hallways. For example, there's an emergency, like the fire doors are leaking now.
All the
Because
hallways are wet on this side coming down, some as far as 15 feet in. The chases that take the standpipe and part of the HVAC that impacts the hallways are wet from the inside out. Those hallways have a shared plenum, and so when you have one sick chase here, you're spreading that air through the rest of the hallway in those common areas.
Yeah.
So those things have not been
Which is
mitigated.
why they all smell musty pretty much.
Your HVAC ductwork that comes down from the roof level HVAC system all the way down and as the diffusers by the elevators, that's got wet bad and it's not going to dry out. So that's another thing that needs to be replaced. That's part of our items of damages. So has it in hard costs, in actual hard costs, expenses from vendors, have you reached the point of the deductible as we sit here today? No, but you're probably about 300 into it. But whether we're here or not, you have this mitigation expense that's going to keep going up and up to bump into that deductible. And it's our job to get the money over and above that, not just to get you money for emergency stuff, but to put the building back and preserve the value of the units, the property values. And that's the railings, the building, the HVAC, the elevator systems got wet. And we think that the electronics need to be replaced. And that's what these experts are coming out for. This is what we've already itemized.
Can you please give us an idea of the work that will be completed in these 67 units that were affected? What has been affected?
The work.
Charles will be here in about 2 minutes. He's listened here far longer than I've had. I've been here to mitigate the damages here over the last 4 or 5 days. And so he literally left Orlando at 5 a.m. ran into some traffic. He says he's pulling in right now.
Charles at 24/7.
Oh, okay.
Is there a separation between the company that identifies what needs to be
Yeah, that's why-
and the company that's going to repair it?
Yeah, the company identified, I don't know them, but Howie.
Yeah, HW3.
Yeah, HW3 Consulting.
Separate contract.
Yeah,
from-
is a separate contract that hired by me, ratified by the board, does a loss assessment with us. We're the lawyers that assist them with that, getting experts, assisting with the quantification of the damages, providing interpretation of the policy to support it, make sure that we don't categorize something in a manner that takes us out of coverage. There's so many little pitfalls there that it's just.
Actually, a comment on units that are wet, continue to be wet just over the last couple of days. 16H, 12E, 9E, 5E, or 130, re-wetted every time it rains. We can,
It's
yes,
two.
it's snow re-wetted 3 times. And so we continue to add equipment. We have some power issues in the hallways and with egress and with tripping hazards. I have hallways that are so wet that even the plastic I'm putting down will not stick to it. And we do have some assessments on dry map and mapping all of the moist areas in those hallways.
Yeah, that's what HW3 has already gone through, is preparing what is called a moisture map that the adjuster asked for. So we're assisting with, I hired a forensic photographer. The moisture mapping has been done by the entire building of all the units to show the big picture to the insurance company, and maybe in the future, and hopefully not, a arbitration group but right now, if the adjuster gets all the information and the moisture map and all the documentation of the support of the multiple areas of losses and damages, then we're going to be good, in my opinion, with them beating the deductible and starting to issue payments.
So are the experts allowed to be applied toward the deductible, like the forensic photographer and things like that?
Well, that's just, we're required. Yeah, we're required, or you're required, under the policy to provide supporting documentation of your claim. So the insurance company's, in a way, saying, we're not gonna do anything. You guys tell us what the damages are, and then we'll verify. So in order to meet our obligation of the policy, certain consultants and experts have to be hired. And therefore, we're gonna make the demand that they should pay those fees. And so, we have another case right now where they agreed to pay, then they didn't pay, and we're filing a notice of insurance violation. But they'll end up paying. So those fees of the consultants, we are going to do our best and think we're gonna be successful in getting most of them paid by the carrier. And if they,
who are the people that are being hired to actually do the work to take down the drywall and?
that's out of my realm.
Okay.
And that's why Charlie Jones has arrived. Before you had National that was ripping carpets up, putting dehumidifiers in there, blowers, and doing some emergency mitigation. They're not on property anymore. So now phase 2 needs to come in where bad drywall and sick areas need to be remediated. And that starts with the demolition and containment. And that's why Charlie at 24/7 was called in by Howard Wolf. But Charlie needs to be hired by you guys and he's going to explain to you better than me about what needs to be done, because he's been all over the building in the past
Part
week.
of your team or no?
Well, it's part of HW3 brought him in, but he's not a hired consultant by me. Because if Charlie came in and just said, yeah, you got to do this, let's take these walls down, and just did a quantification, the building's going to get set.
Right.
Something needs to be done now.
Right.
So, and in fact, there's emergency powers in the event of a hurricane. The Florida statute gives the board emergency powers in these circumstances to prevent mold, mildew, to remove walls, remove carpets, even remove personal effects that could affect the health and health safety of unit owners and protect the condominium. So, but that's a separate thing. That's what needs to be done now, and Charlie's going to explain that.
But Charlie works for you?
No, Charlie doesn't work for me.
The only, from what I understand, you had an HVAC guy come in.
I had a window expert come in, a coding expert,
So the photographer is yours.
an
That's you
HVAC
procure.
expert. What's that?
The photographer.
The forensic photographer, HW3, which is a quasi retention situation. And I used your fire.
Who was that?
safety-
Who's the other guy who was doing a lot of the water
I have
analysis?
that whole list of all the experts.
Okay.
And also AirQuest. I got AirQuest involved because I know the board hired AirQuest, but I facilitated that because as a lawyer and representing you guys, I don't want any issue with the demolition of anything that has asbestos in it.
Oh, that was,
And there-
okay, gotcha.
So I thought you gotta do that. And so I got them involved to do sampling. We should get a report today so that when the company that does the demolishing of the walls and containment at this point, that everyone's protected. The unit owners, everyone's protected.
So are the people that are being paid, are they being paid on contingency that we're gonna be paid by the insurance company, or how does that work?
Well, not national that came in here was gonna want their money.
Right.
So that money.
Eventually.
Yes.
Right.
And the company that you hire to do this emergency phase one remediation of the demolition and containment of the bad areas, because there are bad areas now being vented out of windows. That's gonna have to be paid,
Right.
because they have crews, and, you know, they have to get paid.
And then
I don't know how
there's-
much that's gonna be. It's typically, you know, done time and expense, because they can't give you an idea of how much it's going to be, because the time could be a lot more than what's anticipated, because in order, they have to remove drywall, bag it, follow protocol, contain the area, bring the drywall in bags down the elevators. So it's a long process. And that doesn't even include the build back.
And that's 24/7.
Well, 24/7
We'll work
is,
with the contract, right?
yes.
Okay,
Well,
so,
you want-
but I just want to clarify that there's one company to do the removal, and then a separate company to do the replacement of the driveway.
We would be
Not the same
willing to,
company.
we would be willing to do both. Obviously, that, you know, is up to you. Our, you know, kind of first obligation was to at least try and get you guys dealt with the
Clear
immediacy
it
of
out,
things
right.
that are going on. So we've kind of done that as a, you know, just trying to take care of things until we can have this meeting. So we've actively done a few things at this point, and obviously,
So there's been no agreement to buy it with anyone yet to
Correct.
actually put the drywall back.
yes, I mean, and that
I don't know
can
if any drywall's been removed yet.
No, it's going to be.
So before we make any further comments, I want Charlie, if you don't mind, explain to us the process that would happen if we were to hire you as a company to complete not only the mitigation portion, but also the restoration portion of the project. And walk us through what's gonna happen inside these units that were affected, in terms of drywall, windows, etc.
The process is you know, part of the complexity of jobs that are like this with condo associations, or the fact that you've got different, you know, carriers. You essentially have the condo association carrier that will be handling Florida Statute 718 that says this is the responsibility of the condo association. And you've got the interior unit and those fine finishes that are the responsibility of the unit owners. So that's where the complexity comes. That's where we have to try and work collectively with all the unit owners who actually have damage. And so we've got at least the beginnings of an understanding of the assessment that says, you know, E stack, B stack, those things are basically where a lot of the problems lie. We can sit and start to focus on what that looks like as far as a removal and drying process. That's the
You
initial
understand
phase.
address the room this way, because there's some folks behind you
Yep,
that would
can
love to
everybody
hear
hear
this
me?
as well. so that
I can
they
speak
can-
louder, right?
Okay, we're gonna use,
Yep.
stand and
Stand.
to the side.
Stand at the non-podium.
There you
Yeah.
go. Thank you.
I've brought, you know, kind of a laid out process, but basically what we do is follow the consultant's recommendations. So HW3 has written essentially a plan of action. Sometimes they call it a protocol. It's not really a protocol because it's got just a basic drawing and a you know, a stabilization, if you will. So that's kind of where we sit right now, is we're not at a point that we can even, you know, move anything too far forward, because we're just getting continued rain, continued re-wetting of the property. So we've got to stabilize and continue to stabilize the property until we can get the insurance company essentially on the hook to basically start writing checks for you to remediate and plan for, you know, basically the building envelope drying. That's got to be done. Seal the exterior building envelope before we really move into the next phase, because it's going to be just continuing to get the same problem for another. So, you know, Walter, that kind of explains the beginning phase of where we stand. Is we're working in tandem with the insurance carrier the entire way through the process. It's a very detailed documentation to managing through you know, just expenses, and that's where, you know, my expertise has been. I actually worked for the state of Florida for FIGA, for Florida Insurance Guarantee Association, which was a fund that was developed for bankrupt insurance companies. And so I was a general adjuster, much like the guy who's actually writing this claim. We'll have the same vernacular to be able to try and, you know, carry through. How do we manage this through that process? So, love to say it's just an easy bang, 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 bang that gives you a simple answer as to how this will roll, but it's going to be an ongoing process in developing the needs and challenges throughout this, and it really boils down to very detailed, good documentation, and I think that's where our expertise comes, just from my background, knowing that how I need information presented to me in order to get you guys checks. So that's why I have the understanding of the Florida Statute 718 so well, as I did so much condo law stuff for FIGA, that that's where I understand how that differentiation goes for who's in responsibility, whether it's the condo association or the unit owner. So if that helps answer kind of the process a little bit, I'm certainly able to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wanted a little bit more details because some of these homeowners and some of them are here actually of those units who were affected. They're asking us all these questions with regard to what's going to happen with their driveway, what's going to happen with their windows, how is the whole process going to affect them living conditions wise, because right now they're in an apartment that could potentially become toxic, and they're concerned about it. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about their belongings.
Understand, and that the
Timelines.
concern, that is the reason why getting this ball rolling of what we call stabilization is absolutely imperative, because that is the obligation of the association. That is the obligation to make sure that you've protected health, potential related, problems. That's not where we're at currently. And as long as we get dehumidification and drying, get to a point that we can stabilize the building and the structure, then we've got everybody in a pretty good position. It's gonna take time. I'd love to say that we could just start rolling into tearing stuff out and start putting stuff back. The questions become really where are funds coming from. I don't know that there's too many construction companies that can manage the bankroll of a claim this size. So you have to have the thought process. Okay, you've got your deductible. How are we dealing with that? Okay, once deductible's got that dealt with and paid, to move us forward. I mean, we're not asking for everything up front. We're asking for some management of cash flow.
Right.
And then from that standpoint, we can manage as quick or as slow as you guys want to proceed to getting that fund essentially to say, okay, we've got so much that we can do at $250,000.
All right, so can we talk from a standpoint where we have the money and we say, yes, we're gonna start paying you, and best case scenario, everything is good to go. What is that gonna look like? Because you're not giving me that answer, and that's the answers that the homeowners are looking for. What's gonna happen in my apartment? When are you guys coming in? When is this gonna be fixed? Because I want to start enjoying my apartment again, right?
Sure.
I think we start out with contents and the content manipulation.
People are calling me in the morning saying that they're having to wake up at 1, 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning to dry water that is still coming in their apartments. And so we want to tell them, yes, we're gonna be starting on, the 17th floor, and we're gonna be making our way down. In the meantime, those units that are below, we're gonna put equipment in there. That's the kind of thinking process that I want to give them so that we can give them some peace of mind.
We are absolutely 100% ready. We've actually continued to have teams that are planning to start and can start immediately. It's just a matter of having a contract. So we've been doing kind of in good faith effort that we will get a contract signed with you to manage the calls that you've asked for us to come and take care of those needs. Every time you've asked, we've been here within 60, 90 minutes, putting equipment in with no contract and saying, yes, of course, we'll respond. So that's our anticipation. We will ramp up as much as we can get. I mean, we've got plenty of equipment, plenty of resources to be able to handle that. It's could be done in a 7 to 14 day period, depending on how much that we're going to be getting into that. You could be looking at initial estimates of management of this are getting substantial. So when you look at the total picture of the scope of the work, we could be sitting and saying 7 to 14 days, but that means I need to bring 100 people here, and we can do that. But it just depends on how we manage that cash.
Gotcha.
I have a question. Until everyone's talking about the seals of the windows a lot, and starting at 17, et cetera, but until you establish every window has a broken seal or doesn't have a broken seal, isn't it impossible to start ripping out like drywall as, let's say you start at 17 and work your way down, and then you go back and find out that you're on floor 14 and a window that you said was fine and didn't have a seal problem now it does have a seal problem, and you've gone, everyone wants to go as fast as we can to get that fixed, but Also, you don't wanna go so fast that, 2 months you're coming back to fix a seal that you previously said was solid and now it's not. So what's the, are you literally going through every window and every unit and every sliding, every exposed panel to seal the envelope, so to speak, as you're saying?
Right.
And make sure that, each one of these is not gonna circle back 6 months later and went, you know what, we missed 15B or whatever, and now 14B and 13B are, screwed, and we gotta start all over again and rip the drywall out again. Because it sounds great that we're starting in 14 days on 17 and stuff, but is every one of those windows now confirmed that they have a seal broken?
That's an answer that I unfortunately can't give you today. I can talk with the consultant, but that's their responsibility as to who's done all of those inspections. I don't know that they've done every unit. If they haven't, only good news to that is it's not like the claim closes. It's if there's an issue, we need to be notified, we need to immediately address it, and unfortunately, it's a little bit reactive as to what we have to do, because we're needing feedback from you all. If you all tell us, hey, I think I have a problem, or hey, I haven't had my unit inspected, let us get in there as quick as we can to inspect it, and we still may not have that answer. You may get 2 weeks from now in a different direction of wind-driven rain, that seal that hasn't leaked yet leaks. It's still contributed to the storm. It will get part of the claim. It's just going to continue to be an evolving process. So, to give you an honest answer is that we don't have that definitively defined 100%, but it's an open claim until, and all we do is notify the adjuster to say, hey, this just came up. It's definitely related to the storm. The wind shifted. We just have to prove it, and that's where the documentation. So
yeah, but that doesn't really answer what's going to happen 6 months later if you haven't checked the unit. I'm selfishly lucky because I'm on 16B, so I'm talking about 2 floors basically. But I'm also here for someone who's an 8B, and if the work gets done quickly, and then 6 months later, the people on 10B never got checked and everything's wrong. You've gone in, ripped out, replaced, done the dry filter, and you didn't check the seal in 10B for whatever reason, or it failed later.
You're saying it drips down to 9 and drips down to 8.
I know that's not, I'm not trying to be elusive to the answer, is that 6 months from now, if we can have that issue occur, it's still an open claim. We still deal with it.
No, I get that it's not chasing the money, it's doing the work 3 times.
I agree. I would rather not. I'm just telling you realistically, it does occur.
And again, selfishly, I'm high, so it's probably not gonna happen. Sure. Not gonna work to me, but it's probably gonna happen to.
Sure.
Hence, I can't wait to start.
I agree. Exactly.
I have water yesterday. I guess to answer your question too, that's why we have experts that will be doing the windows and looking at the windows and verifying that. I can say for 24/7, the near unit, we're down to the worst very apparent. Alberto, there's a near unit yesterday, it's beautiful. And even though he has flat drywall, there's no look of any moisture going into the red. Obviously, we have a ceiling that's wet in his unit, but it's not dripping.
Right.
So that assessment, part of that assessment will be done by infrared on the inside, and the expert that's going to be working on the outside of the building will be assessing the windows. To answer your question, that would be on his watch.
Robert Roselli is 5B, so if it comes down, he's gonna get him.
Quick question.
I
I thought we were getting today a scope of work.
Exactly.
What unit we were gonna go into, what we were gonna be doing in that unit. I thought we were gonna get a timeline of when this was gonna happen, and I thought we were gonna get bills, because I requested that via email, bills of what has been spent until now. And so far we're getting none of that.
I have everything with me to show you scope of work contract. Just got this morning at 7:30 from HW3, so I'm just getting the information of what they've assessed. And so that goes back to your question, is did we get to every window? I'm looking at it for the first time at 7:30 this morning. So I can tell you what I know of, and then I think we still need to do further assessment. If there's concerns that your unit has not been inspected, they need to be inspected.
Let me address the windows. In our loss assessment with a window expert, we determined that this building was shook in a manner that all of the windows should be pulled, and the insurance company should pay for the windows being pulled, resealed, reset, and resealed, all of them. Now, they might fight us on that, but that's up to us to make sure that they pay for that. And then there's some that need to be replaced. potentially, according to the window expert. But I don't think that the plan of action with assessing the damage and presenting the claim is just hitting and missing on different windows. Now, as far as the remediation, we also have done moisture mapping. So even if somebody hasn't reported water in their unit, because the water could trickle down behind the drywall in that space under the windowsill, we've done moisture mapping. That assists 24/7 with understanding where there's wetness that might not be manifested into an immediate problem, but it's going to continue to be a problem. So anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm more worried about people that don't assess that they really need their windows replaced and saying, my windows are fine, there is no leak. And, you know, especially if you're in 3B. You know,
To answer
and
your question, I haven't done an assessment for water, and maybe Charles has, but I haven't done an assessment for water in all the units. I'm only taking care of the units that have an immediate need. I've only been here for a couple days. And so for those units I have listed, I've gone in and done moisture mapping and done all moisture mapping. Steve before me was doing moisture mapping before I arrived here in Florida.
And that was in response to where there was clearly water.
Yeah, yes.
Correct.
And also areas that weren't clear, as in this example, where we were taking care of walls and I did infrared, we saw giant splotches of moisture in a new drywall that just needed remodeled.
Charles, in your experience and you work for FIGA, at what point does the insurance company say, okay, we'll advance you some?
We are close. They have submitted, my understanding with Howard is that they have now submitted a recommended reserve. And so from an adjuster perspective, he's now set that. And so he should be making a request based on, proceeding, which should be immediately. And so the request probably is going to be for about $2.5 to $3.5 million. The problem is that it takes probably 30 days before you'll actually see the money. So that becomes your next challenge. It's not like it comes immediately. And how do you manage that? You've got $1 million deductible to deal with, or whatever that size deductible. So those are the challenges.
Do we have it? I'm a part-time resident, and all I know is that we've had water intrusion. What other kinds of damage the buildings have?
Roof, roof structure has got an issue. There's a main drain scupper that's actually got some issues, which is causing plenum wall that's got most of your soil stack and some of the main building components that function are all within an area that's got some potential water inside of that. It needs to get open and exposed and be remediated. So right now, that's where we're at least still in a good position that we could be drying and preventing from what would be some mold growth or some potential hazardous stuff that on top of that. So you're still okay because you've done your initial mitigation. You now need to get this building stabilized to prevent that kind of stuff from happening.
All right, so the only, I guess, issue that we're having is possibly funding all this remediation.
Correct.
Immediately. And we're talking,
contract.
everyone
really
keeps saying about 30 days.
Yeah.
It's a big job. I don't see why it's an issue to hold out for 30 days. We have some funds. We're potentially trying to streamline it. We're potentially talking about doing an assessment here because we have straight line reserves. We can only put things towards what they're supposed to be towards. I don't see why 30 days is such an issue.
That's the goal. I'm only here from the standpoint of contract. I'm just giving you the
I
perspective.
get you.
Contract, they need to be in the, at least signed with you to move forward.
I understand that.
From a standpoint of some funds, I'm 100% negotiable on, we can talk about that. I just want you to know I'm not a bank and I can't fund this.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to work with you. I gotta just know how to manage cash flow, which then dictates how many people can I put on it and make sure that I'm managing our cash flow so that we can manage your building appropriately.
Now, of these 67 units, which is almost half, or about half, there's obviously some that are super priority.
Correct.
Like under 5? Or is it, yes, all of them need to be done within days?
Yeah, unfortunately, the ones that have plenum issues are probably the ones that I'm most concerned about. That soil stack and where the roof drain that's got the leak that's going on, until we get that open, that could become the biggest source of problem. That if we don't get on top of that, that's where a lot of moisture is coming in. We've got the windows, of course, and those are obvious. We can deal with those, and that's just a fairly directed dehumidification, blowers and scrubbers to take care of that. So, the ones that I would say that's probably, from what I've seen, and it's still been limited to, what I've seen versus what I'm hearing, I would say we're looking at probably 15 that are critical. Great, those are perfectly tackleable to get.
And that's drywall and taking out windows and things.
Not necessarily taking out windows
okay.
yet, and that's, we want to stabilize and get to getting a coatings and waterproofing person here to get the exterior building envelope sealed before we start putting things back.
But you can't do the sheet rock and stuff and the finishes until the windows.
That's correct. That's correct.
Windows would be the last.
And
So you
it's
put
not
sheet rock
necessarily-
in before you take out windows?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a replacement of the window. We have to still wait for the expert to tell us, can we coat it? Can we seal it with the waterproofing? Is it just essentially a caulking? And that is a possibility, but that's what the reports have got to come back and say, did it actually harm the window to a replacement point? I have seen, I think Mr. Reedy's place, his door is actually jacked to a point that it's a problem. I mean, it's got to be replaced. It's actually, the wind did enough to where it's not even really sitting right.
Do we have any of those reports?
It's placed request.
Yeah,
That's just it.
Not only that, but it's also re-wetting, I believe, the place below me, and above me, my ceiling is wet, which means the guy above me has a water problem also.
So what are you waiting on? You're waiting on a contract from us?
Well, I understand the contract because, we discuss amongst ourselves, it's like, even this national that comes in here and is gonna give a potential bill of $300,000 and doesn't have a contract. I don't know anyone that does it.
I think there is a contract.
Where is
They
it?
have a contract. We had to sign it that night or they wouldn't start working.
I
You're talking
think
about
that's
with
allowing
National, the
access.
first one?
I think that's allowing access, but
Access, okay.
who does that?
Well,
So that's actually.
I mean, we appreciated them coming in with fast
We're doing
as
the
they
same
did.
thing essentially with you so far as we have no contract. And if we told you.
I know, but you have-
I'm not giving him a good feeling.
There's only relationships here, so,
Yeah,
you
no,
know, you felt pretty
that's what I'm
comfortable.
here, is I wanted
Yeah.
to say, we've done this in good faith to say, we needed this conversation. We just now need to get to that point to signing the contract using what we believe will get covered by insurance. I hear what you're saying about the 30 days. I'm hopeful that we get that. If we move things along and we have great progress, it will work out. The concern is how do we get anything happening for that 30 days? I can't wholly fund if we say, Charlie, go, 7 to 14 days, we want 100 people here, and we can manage that. It may not even be in your best interest, because we still don't have an answer from the expert for windows to say that.
We don't have
things are
any
gonna
of
seal.
that yet, they haven't.
No, our expert rendered an opinion that he thinks that the windows need to be replaced, and certain window systems will need to be replaced, other ones will reset, resealed. But that's part of our overall initial loss assessment. We did that immediately based upon the storm and the amounts of moisture that we're seeing in the building. But, so we do have that, but now it has to be further supported. Their experts are gonna look at it.
Yeah.
But the windows should, I think first you remediate by removing the wet walls, containing it, cleaning it. There's a protocol. The build back is gonna have to be, you can't build back, meaning put the drywall back.
So it could be open walls for a while.
Until the windows and the envelope sealed.
So that's what
So
they're getting at.
there's a
What are these
stage,
people living in?
but first things first, because the wet walls need to be removed, because what's going on right now is you're getting re-wetting behind the drywall. And you're getting a source in an area where this mold is gonna develop, and it's gonna infect the buildings, affect neighbors, in other units.
Okay, so we understand this, but what they wanna know is how long and what is the process, what is it gonna cost? Is that not the question on
And it's
everybody's
also,
mind?
let me just throw this out
And
there.
what are we gonna do?
That's true. Let's say we did an assessment.
Yeah.
All right,
But not afraid.
let's say we did an assessment.
Okay.
And we're still talking this 30-day window. How fast do you think we're gonna get this money in?
Well, we'll know more after next Thursday, but the way it works, typically they're gonna ask for additional information. They will understand the obvious thing. As soon as they determine that it's in excess of deductible, they they
They, the
should
insurance.
release funds.
Okay.
But that may not be for 60 days from today. Because, it depends on, they gotta, this is an environment, this isn't their only claim right now. There's claims going on all over the place. But I think that the fact that we got this claim in sooner than later, I mean, you guys are ahead of the curve. So we're in a good position as far
good
as
as probably could be.
documenting,
Right.
presenting the claim, already having experts, already having things set up. So I don't think it could be done any sooner than we've done it. And how soon it can come in, I don't have a crystal ball for that, but I could say that we're in good shape for them to hopefully assess it in excess of.
So we agree with this and this, so you can, here's the funds for that, but we can use that funds to say, okay, this is the immediate stuff we need to get done.
Yes.
But even with that, like I said, let's say we pass an assessment. We say, look, we need this for emergency funds, and, I mean, the last assessment we had wasn't even that much, and we did it over 6 months.
Well,
So
we had the luxury of doing it over 6 months, right?
What's that?
We had the luxury of doing
The
it, because
luxury.
it wasn't an emergency situation like we're in now, so.
We do have a couple of options. First of all, I think that we'll contact the bank and try and open up a line of credit, which will still take 30, 45
That's
days.
right. That was the first thing Walter and I discussed. And like, remember last time, it took a while.
But
There was a huge fee involved.
We
too,
should
but-
check with the attorney because you may be able to borrow from your reserve. As long as you pay it back.
Especially if you have an application.
So if we show, look, it's available if we need it, and then maybe there's something we can sign, that's something we can negotiate.
That's what I'm looking for.
Oh,
Just
okay.
comfort that we can work it, there's gonna be a lot of dialogue and conversation. How much can we push to get you guys to where, every day there's gonna be a new issue, and we know that, and so we're gonna have to address it. It's not like that we can just say definitively, yes, we're gonna go do this all. How do we manage?
No, then you get something for
the,
a while.
I mean, is there a way to do a contract with just sort of like a retainer for you, so that you have some money to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what this is stating, it's saying, help me understand what your financial situation is so that I can sit and say, how do I manage cash flow? I think we're gonna be okay. I do believe that this is gonna work out well for you. It's just, we're gonna manage that, manage for my business and for you guys.
What kind of money are you looking for to get started?
Well, I mean, ideally, the scope of what we have seen at 67 units is looking roughly around $1 million of basically dehumidification, drywall containment, areas, drywall removal, general conditions, that kind of stuff. So that's the basic scope that we have anticipated. Now, that's just an anticipated. It may decrease, could increase. Depends on once we open up that funnel wall. And the sooner that we tackle it, the less likely it will increase, the more likely it will decrease. So that's just the rough number that we're starting with. So I'm looking for roughly a quarter of that, $250,000. Now, do you need to do that today? No, but could we say $50,000 start as a retainer? That would be probably.
$50,000
Yeah.
Why didn't you just do it on a billed basis?
I mean, I can understand having cash flow.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Maintain
we
pays
will
people.
put it on a bill basis, but that's
I
where,
guess.
okay, so next week, when I gotta start making payroll of 100 people, if that's what we're asking for, then we have to understand how we're gonna deal with that. Then that just turns to me as saying, I gotta manage cash flow. Do I need to go and ask my bank to extend my line of credit so that I can pay 100 people to help you? That's what I'm trying to deal with, just to be candid with you. It's just figuring out how we manage cash flow.
Is it legally possible for us to go into our reserve account and not do an assessment for if we say for
It
2
would be
months?
another vote, I think.
Yeah, it would be
I think what you're talking about, is it's possible
Yeah.
to use the total of reserves and say, can we get a line of credit for us from the reserves that we have to the bank? I mean, because if we have to move stuff around, oh my God, votes.
Okay,
votes.
would we be able to, after that, then assess people to replace those reserves? Because I'm not going to use those reserves, I mean, that would be crazy.
No.
You would have to replace
You
it.
have to do it as a contract with the reserves, so we're gonna take this amount, we will pay it back within 60, or whatever the number is. We'll pay it back with 60 days, either we have the insurance money, or we have to do an assessment. But
Okay, cool,
But we
that's fine.
pushed it, we kicked the can down the road a little bit legally, and we hopefully keep people from having to reach into their pockets this soon if we can help it.
I don't
Perfectly
think there'd be a
reasonable to
problem.
try and sit and manage through that as you guys have the challenges of figuring out how those funds need to be managed. But I've seen that before, that is what happens, is the board will sit there and say, okay, we understand it's gonna be in 60 days, but then it requires you guys to get all your documentation, and that falls back on property management to put that together. and say, okay, yeah, we can manage this, and Charlie, we can manage your cash flow. We just need to present the bill. It's a rate sheet that just says, here's your hours. We have a person, basically a clerk of the works, we call it, to manage through just an incoming flow of people. When you start to get 100 people, it becomes where it's got to be managed very detailed, and they've got to be
And
managed.
the 100 people would be just for expedite.
Correct, correct. And that may not be in the best interest if we have a window guy that says, I can't get back here getting new windows installed until 4 weeks from now.
So then
we
it
need to
doesn't- yeah.
to step that back in your best interest. There's no point in rushing through it to try and get to a point we can't get windows, and it's re-wet 4 weeks from now. And we gotta come back and dry again. So it's a management challenge, but it can be managed.
What percentage of the vote do we need in order to use the reserves? 51?
Yeah, it would take up, shouldn't be.
How long would it
The
take us to
problem-
get 100% of the vote to do this?
You don't
The
need
problem is
100%, you need
that-
51%.
I don't think you wanna go that route.
No.
You don't wanna go there.
14-day notice. So it's just the timing.
But the point is, regardless, we all agree that we have to take care of these units and get moving quickly, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're all on the same page now, it's a matter of how we do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, we can do that.
Nobody's addressed
Are we-
yet exactly what's happening to these people. That gentleman is sitting there, his apartment is
The-
basically.
I'm gonna have open walls, I have
He's
no
gonna have
carpeting.
open- He has no carpeting. How does he go forward from here? Can he claim against, no. can he
His
claim
insurance could have
against-
loss of use, so he could.
Yes, so
We
I
discussed-
can address that a little bit. So, because I'm a restoration guy, so the first thing we would do is we would come in and we would manipulate these contents. So those contents we'd bring from rooms that were wet to rooms that were dry. We would start the dry remediation process, pulling carpet, pulling pads, spraying antimicrobial, doing flood cuts once we know there's no asbestos containing materials.
What's the flood test entail?
Flood cut.
Flood-
Essentially,
flood-
2 foot to 4 foot, and it's just a terminology. We use.
Oh, okay.
Yes. We don't do flood cuts until we have an ACM test, asbestos containing material test, right? And so, then we would go ahead and throw plastic over top of its contents in that room, or kind of give him some type of reassembly of that room so some could be in that room. Now, with the dehumidifiers, the fans, this get very hot, very noisy. I've experienced it in my own home, it's hard to sleep. I'm sure I can attest to this. The temperature in the unit goes up, and as he can attest to, his thermostat actually has a rheostat on it for relative humidity. And so we brought the relative humidity down from
85 to 55.
85 to 55. So within that time frame, we're trying to reduce the relative humidity inside the building, so other components of the building, cellulose, which is anything that grows from the ground, which mold loves. The more dense it is, the harder it is for it to land and eat. And the more porous it is, the easier it is for mold to grow. Mold grows great on newspaper and really hard on a piece of oak because the newspaper is highly digestible. Given high humidity, little or no light, little no air movement, little no dehumidification, and a food source, mold will grow at a tremendous rate. And so our job is to stabilize it like we did over here and get the humidity down immediately. Then it comes to managing the expectation of time, and two, managing the contents and where these people are going to go and entertain themselves to sleep and to live and to eat. So some people's insurance will have loss of use. That'll allow them to go get a hotel for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of money. And so those will be individual insurance policies that are owned by each of the owners.
Okay.
What I've seen, and do you mind if I share with you?
No, go ahead.
So I've looked at his policy, so the challenge that you all face is looking at those individual policies, and everybody's gonna have to, I would think the wise decision would be for us to, not to take it all on, I'm just saying that we're already in there, we might as well try and figure out each individual policy of every unit that we're in and see how we can help. Those are, for his scenario, he's only got 1 month loss of use. So that means then how do we
Not
manage
a dollar
that?
amount?
So
I knew
it's at
another friend
$1,200,
had
and
a
his
dollar.
happens to be a $1,200 amount, which isn't enough to
Oh,
cover.
yeah, that's not
So his gets, but it depends on coverages, so, how much interior coverage did you take? So he had $25,000 of interior coverage on his particular unit, so that, is how that needs to be managed. There's gonna be issues from that, again, I mentioned earlier, the 718 that spells out responsibilities. The condo only has so much responsibility that it becomes the unit owner. So Mr. Ricci has got his policy, he's filed a claim, he's working with a local representative, who's what they call a public adjuster, and assisting through that process. So we're happy to collaborate in whatever way that we can. and try and help you all read through those and what's the best scenario. So each unit's gonna be a case-by-case basis. You gotta look through it and say, here's that 30-day period, we're probably gonna need you to move out. That's gonna be in your best interest, is to say, go get a place to stay, because I need to get drywall done and it's gonna be messy and noisy and loud. We'll do this in 14 days, we'll take care of your unit, and we'll need to manage through that on a case-by-case basis, so.
The other thing is you can't get an adjuster. I mean, mine's not coming till next Friday.
It's very difficult now.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the other big challenge. And, from a perspective that the insurance companies take is that if you are, planning to do the work, I think their biggest concern, and a lot of people will try and not do the work. You're not in that situation. You need to do the work. The work is you're trying to prevent and protect your asset. If you move and you've got the capability of getting that part rolling forward, the association's doing their job, individual unit owners are doing their job in mitigating and starting the process, they're a lot more likely to write those checks pretty quickly. And most carriers that are going to be like Mr. Ricci for Florida Peninsula, I think was your insurance carrier, will send an adjuster out. They'll probably have check writing authority in the field to writing checks on the spot because they're smaller dollar amounts. So most small adjusters who are probably going to handle that claim have authority up to $30,000. So they'll be able to write that check right then and there. It doesn't necessarily happen maybe 3 or 5 days before they get theirs, but they're smaller claims, but they got to get there. So we could be looking at 2 weeks before we can get an answer. The problem that I go back to answer Mr. Ricci's timeline, I don't want to go and start putting stuff back or doing any of the additional work until we get a door fixed, a window sealed, and we get the building envelope sold. And that's really why, again, I'm not trying to be elusive as to time. I would love to say, okay, we got this money, here's the process, and we're going to be at 90 days before completion because I'm going to be able to put a window coating, a window person on it, a coatings person on this, and a waterproofing expert that's going to do all of these 3 components in 30 days. That means the next 30 days are construction. So,
and Walter, you mentioned this yesterday, and I think it's probably really relevant for you that if you're floor by flooring, you're also floor by flooring and then having severe problems in pockets of floors. So you might be starting at 17, but 8E or 8A or whatever has way bigger problem, and that's got to be all ripped out. And so to kind of say, and Walter, this was said yesterday, I think by you, is like, well, if they start on 17, it'll probably be 14 days for 17, and then it'll be 14 days for ballpark. You didn't make any offers or guarantees or anything, but aren't you going to have to move around? I mean, so telling people 14 days is not realistic at all.
Yeah. Yes, so, I 100%. I mean, that's
so you're going to go get a place because it's going to be unlivable for 14 days while they do the drywall. It's going to be unlivable way longer than that.
And let me step back then. So unlivable is different than from a standpoint right now, Mr. Ricci made.
Right.
I don't mean to say that it is it's a pleasant situation, but it is livable. And so realistically, the insurance company is not going to write him a check to say you got air conditioning, you got power, you have floors, you have kitchen sink, and
that's why I was a little loose to say.
So so that's where when we come to a point where I don't want you to be in the position that we're in there doing construction and having to do the dusty stuff. We'll have containment up, but it's going to be difficult to live in there, and we will minimize that time frame to meet the expectations of those loss of use portions so that you can manage your budget.
It's the loss of use portion.
Yeah.
And especially if you have renters, like I'm sure some people have, they're not going to want to be there during this. So it's loss of use, loss of income. So it's
all goes back to policy. Yeah, I mean, hopefully those policies are stating that they are a renter's policy. Those could be some pushback. Just to be honest with you, that you could get some pushback if your renter says, well, I'm not staying here. And so then that creates another complexity. That's the challenges that we face, but they are all presentable. They're all things that I can help you with. We've got to see each one. We got to walk through all of them. It's labor intensive. That is the problem that we are faced with, but I think we can solve it. That means we're fully invested into this, 100% accessible to being able to answer all of those questions because you're going to have 67 different questions and phone calls. And so we really need to set up shop almost in here, have an availability for cycling through every day.
My insurance company requires if there was exterior building damage. Is there something that you can in writing
Absolutely.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, that's an easy
And when we repair and replace some of these items, are we doing it for the future? Like what happens next year if there's another event like this? Will we be reoccurring the same thing? Or is there a better way to fix it so that it's more stable in the future?
Only if there's more
So
damage.
here's what I'll say to that is you do have, from a standpoint of Florida typically has what they call code upgrade coverages. As long as it meets building code, that's the extent that we can go to without it being an increased cost for you that you would have to come out of pocket. So to answer your question, yes, there may be alternate methods to make it better, but reality is you're only up to go. And so, that's on the insurance company. If you wanted to do something voluntarily that is a better system and then, engineered a little bit differently and better, that would have to be an out-of-pocket expense. And I wouldn't advise that even we entertain that as an option because, this storm was, you're getting storms. I mean, the last time this occurred here was in Wilma. So that was 12 years ago. I know that's terrible to say, but that's part of living on the beach. You're almost better off not coming out of pocket and trying to figure out this massive scenario as to, let's make this massive upgrade. You could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and do something that there is still no guarantee because if you got a category 5, it's not going to really matter.
What are the chances that the insurance company's going to want to arbitrate on some of the expenses? Does that occur?
Of course, yeah.
And are they going to push back on $2 million worth of expenses?
Of course they are.
Try to
That's
tie
what
it
they do.
up for
I mean,
5 years?
This is so sitting on the other side, the truth, I was in a little bit different situation sitting on the other side because we were basically a quasi-state-run agency that we did not have that same pushback that the people who were on the board were. So it was more of a mindset of the terms have always been defined. There's a book written called Delay, Deny, Defend. And that is their MO. I mean, they're trying to figure out their cash flows. We're talking cash flow here. They're trying to figure out theirs. They're trying to delay as much as they can to see where their incoming premiums are coming from so they can make all these payments. So it is going to be a better process that we document and support everything, but it will still get challenged just because of the delay side. But if we are positioned to document this exceptionally well, we will do very well at the end.
We don't want to help with delay.
That's correct.
We can help it.
Correct.
Do we have any indication that the insurance company has the intent to pay out anything at this moment?
It's shockingly, I mean, I know it seems like you guys have been here for a while dealing with it. This is considered early for them. I don't see them delaying too much on an initial downstroke, but like I said, it's at least 30 days.
National removed by base ones all along the windows and they drilled the holes. I have blowers on for a week.
Okay.
So is the assumption that once you seal gale blow, that you're still going to remove the sills and all the drywall interior?
I don't know your particular unit on the scope of the sheets that they're defined as where water intrusion occurred to what's being removed. So if your happens to be one of the 67 that they defined, it will be removed.
Yes.
Even though, that was their concern of the paper on the backside may have not been able to get dry enough that could actually have some mold potential growing at some point. So that's been the recommendation of the consultant. So we would be removing yours.
I haven't filed a claim yet, so what would be my responsibility when that's?
Did you have carpet issues in yours? So you don't have any carpet issues. Do you have any other wet areas? Do you have any damage to your contents at all?
No.
So yours would be a scenario that is really strictly just still on the association, the drywall. The only thing that you would be responsible for is painting. So the definition for the 718 says that texture in is the responsibility of each individual unit owner. The drywall out is the responsibility of the association. So just essentially painting, and that does not sound like a huge amount of money to paint. So, unfortunately, I would recommend for you is to paint just out of pocket and not your files money, correct? So,
Who are the 67 units? I mean, I have no idea whether I'm one or not.
we can certainly get you the list.
Have we notified the 67?
You work on
We haven't notified.
As I said, my concern is that I'm still getting water from 16E and I've never heard anything from it, but yet I'm probably giving water to 14E. But you got water continuously coming in, so I need to find out what are my responsibilities in 16E above and 14E below.
Sure. I mean, really, responsibilities for you, I mean, you're not, if it was an interior pipe that had created water damage to another unit, that would be a responsibility thing that we would need to be talking about. Still, this all falls underneath building envelope, water, wind-driven rain that's penetrating and been damaged from an initial occurrence that is what needs to still be dealt with. So as new things come up, they can be identified, if it's not on the list, we can address them and answer them.
Right, so a lot of people who don't know that they're gonna have damage sooner or later, that's my concern. And some of the units, maybe some of the people here, you might not know that you're gonna have damage because the place above has damage and then it filters down to your wall.
Mr. Ritchie, we have a list of 67 units that we have identified damage to some extent. Now, we don't have the details of to what extent, but we're gonna be notifying these 67 people to let them know that there is damage, and we're gonna be coming into some extensive, well, to some extent, drywall repairs. Depending on the report from the window person, they might have to remove the windows, we might not. We might have to replace and reset them again. So once we get more details, we'll pass that along to the homeowners. But for now, our duty is gonna be calling the 67 unit owners to let them know this is what's going on in your unit, and this is what might happen. And further down the road, once we get an update from 24/7 or from HW3, we're gonna give you more details. Okay. So that way everyone knows.
Can we just ratify that
Yes,
vote and
yes,
finish
yes.
that? I'm not saying finish the meeting, but we need a quorum to do this. Then if Dawn leaves to go to work, we can just continue the conversation after. Is that okay with
Yes, please.
everyone?
Can I please have a motion to ratify the decision to hire? Okay, I got a first by Ann, second by Robert. All in favor, please? In favor? And Robert left. Okay, so that's motion stands. We were actually gonna go to item B, but pretty much we've been discussing item B, which is the due diligence and efforts from the association to the residents, and basically we've kind of already have an idea of what's going on. So I was gonna say, if I may, let's adjourn the meeting, so please can I have a motion? Yes.
Can we just adjourn and then
Yeah,
talk
buddy.
about this?
Yeah, we do.
The ratification was the ratification of
To hire you.
the law firm.
Right.
But I think you might need a motion, I'm not sure, to hire.
No, we can, their contract hasn't even been reviewed yet.
We have to-
We can do it.
All right, so that's why you were adjourning now, and then
Yeah.
you'll make that decision.
We can do it.
And then we can ratify later.
We can
Another
ratify it.
meeting.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
wanna read
Because
this
like,
with ours.
Even with this, we can do it. We gotta read.
So motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, please.
Yeah.
We got a first by Mark, second by Ann.
Sounds good.
All in favor, please?
Aye.
All right, all in favor, motion stands. So meeting adjourned at 9:27.
Okay, now we can continue.
Any questions by the board?
It's on the wet list, so they're gonna take care of it.
What about the one below? Because.
So that's on the wet list, that's pretty much the entire east side.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I know what your concern is that you fix yours, you got someone up there that's not
Right.
watertight.
Because I haven't heard from them, they're not even here. I'm surprised that they didn't.
Yeah, it's the entire stack, that whole east side.
I noticed something yesterday, maybe protect the deck above, but water's actually getting underneath the tile and coming into the